Okay, so you've been investing for a couple years now. You know what a stock is, you've got your index funds, you feel pretty good about your financial knowledge. Then someone mentions bond yields or the Fed raising rates, and you just nod along. You have no idea what any of it actually means or why it makes the news every single week. You just know it sounds important, and you quietly hope nobody asks you to explain it. Here's the thing, bonds aren't some boring side topic for retirees. Bonds are actually the foundation that the entire financial system sits on top of. And if you don't understand them, you're missing the thing that explains almost everything else happening with your money. My name is Richard, and I spend way too much time thinking about why bonds get completely ignored by beginner investors, even though they explain half of what's happening in the economy. If you're someone who's been investing in stocks but skips right past anything with the word bond in it because it sounds boring or confusing, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Now, here's what most people don't realize. A bond is actually a really simple idea wrapped in intimidating language. Look, when you buy a bond, you're literally just loaning money to someone, usually a government or a company. In return, they promise to pay you back the full amount later, plus interest along the way. That's it. You're the bank. Say you buy a $1,000 bond with a 5% annual interest rate, maturing in 10 years. Every year, you get $50 in interest. After 10 years, you get your original $1,000 back, on top of all that interest you collected. Simple, predictable, boring, and that's exactly the point. Here's where it gets really interesting though. Bonds aren't just a safer investment for old people like most beginners assume. Bonds actually set the price of money itself. When you hear about interest rates going up or down on the news, that's the bond market, not some abstract Federal Reserve decision happening in isolation. According to the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association, the U.S. bond market is valued at over $51 trillion. That's larger than the U.S. stock market. The bond market isn't some side character in the economy. It's arguably the main character, and stocks are reacting to it. This is the part that changes how people see the news forever. When bond yields go up, it means investors can earn a solid, safe return just from lending money. So why would they take on the risk of stocks for similar returns? That's often exactly why stock markets drop when interest rates rise. Money literally moves out of stocks and into bonds, chasing that safer return. And that same relationship touches your life directly. Higher bond yields mean higher mortgage rates. On a $300,000 home loan, moving from a 4% to a 7% interest rate is the difference between paying roughly $1,432 a month and $1,996 a month. That's over $560 extra every single month, driven by bond market movements most people never even think about. Now, you might be thinking, Richard, if bonds are this important, why does everyone ignore them? Here's what's actually going on psychologically. Our brains are wired to chase excitement and novelty. That's called novelty bias. Stocks feel exciting because prices swing, stories exist around companies, and there's a dopamine hit tied to watching a number jump. Bonds feel boring because, well, they're designed to be boring, predictable, steady, and our brains are terrible at valuing boring things, even when boring is exactly what makes something powerful. Think of it like this. Stocks are like sprinting fast, exciting, exhausting, and you can't sustain it forever. Bonds are like walking steady, reliable, and it's actually what gets you the farthest distance over time without collapsing halfway through. A smart, long-term investor doesn't choose one or the other. They know when to sprint and when to walk. Here's the part that really surprises people. As you get closer to retirement, Financial advisors typically recommend shifting more of your portfolio into bonds, sometimes using a rule like your age in bonds. So a 60-year-old might hold 60% bonds. Why? Because bonds protect you from something called sequence of returns risk. Basically, if the stock market crashes right when you start withdrawing money in retirement, you can permanently damage your portfolio's ability to recover. Bonds act like a shock absorber during exactly that moment. Now, you might be thinking, Richard, I'm in my 20s or 30s. Why would I care about bonds right now? Fair question. You probably don't need a heavy bond allocation, yet most young investors are fine holding 90 to 100% stocks. But understanding bonds now means you'll actually understand why the market behaves the way it does, why your mortgage rate is what it is, and why the news says what it says, instead of just nodding along, confused for the next 20 years. So here's what I want you to actually do. First, next time you hear bond yields rose or the Fed raised rates in the news, pause and remind yourself this affects borrowing costs and stock market behavior directly. It's not some disconnected headline. Second, if you're within 10 to 15 years of retirement, start researching bond funds like BND or AGG as a way to gradually add stability to your portfolio. Third, regardless of your age, spend 20 minutes actually reading about how bond pricing works. It will make every other financial concept click into place faster. Look, bonds don't get the glamour that stocks do, and they never will. But understanding them is what separates people who genuinely understand how money moves through the economy from people who just watch numbers go up and down without knowing why. You don't need to become a bond trader. You just need to stop skipping past the boring part, because it's usually the part explaining everything else. If this finally made bonds make sense, subscribe, because I'm breaking down exactly this kind of confusing finance topic every single week. And hit that like button so this reaches someone else still nodding along, confused every time bonds come up. I'll see you in the next one.